Oh, there we are, live. Yeah. Okay.
So let's go to the paper.
Okay. So shall I just screen share immediately, or
Yes, screen share.
how do I do that? Oh, there we are. Yeah. Is it clear? Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, great.
Wait. Because there are two kind of screen share. One is your screen sharing with people, and one is with your audience.
Oh, I see.
So I have to check which one you are doing right now. A moment. Okay.
So there's screen share with a green square, and then there's showcase. Is it that one? No, it can't be that one.
Look, we go into the video and we see. Yes, it's shared. It's shared.
Okay, great. All right.
Okay.
So do you want me to just start talking now? Yeah, about this stock. Yeah.
Yes. Just explain to me.
Okay.
What
Yeah.
you are doing.
So this document is a result of me investigating.
It's not public, right?
Well, I'm
Is
going to
it?
publish it a day. Well, I was waiting for a couple of comments from Andrew and Jonas Nick, so I don't know. In the next day or two, I suppose. So anyway, yeah, I was saying that I did a similar thing before for confidential transactions, and the motivation is like, I don't understand this thing, and it's pretty complicated, and I want to understand it, and I want to really know it's correct and what its properties are. So I took the time, this was back in 2015, to understand confidential transactions as best as I could and write out a document explaining it. I actually got some positive feedback from that, quite a lot, but from only a small group of people, obviously, because it being technical and mathematical, only a small group of people are really interested in this stuff. And this is a kind of the same deal, but about bulletproofs. And so what I did here is I went back and tried to sort of reconstruct all the bits and pieces of mathematics and proofs that sort of got let's say the precursors of bulletproofs. So I've called it from zero knowledge to bulletproofs, because this is mostly around how you build certain kinds of zero knowledge proofs. For example, how do you prove in zero knowledge that the dot product of two vectors is a certain number? I mean, that's actually a really core part of bulletproofs itself, but in and of on its own, that problem is interesting. So
all right, for a little bit of context.
Go on, sure.
Because I don't read research stuff. Those are not applied to Bitcoin, so I don't even know. Well, I have an idea, but I would like you to explain that. What are these Zcash snarks, Z snarks, zero coin, Zcash? What is the connection?
Yeah, good question, which I can't answer because I haven't done the equivalent research into ZK snarks. So I may do that in the future, but it's a similar kind of system to that, in that it can prove facts about. For example, you can prove that the pre-image of a hash contains a certain string, something like that. So it's similar to that, but I've only studied this one, so I can't give you. I mean, apart from telling you very general things like, ZK snarks require a trusted setup, and ZK stocks don't, and bulletproofs don't, and ZK snarks uses a certain kind of cryptographic assumption, like called pairings, bilinear pairings, and this one uses the discrete log problem. General commentary about it, sure, but I haven't studied that. But I have studied this.
So no, as far as I know, no one using these starks, right?
I don't believe that's being used in practice. Yeah, but because I don't think it's even close to being practical. But I'm just going off what I've heard in presentations. I haven't studied it.
And how about bulletproofs? What's the connection?
What's the connection? Well, I think the difference is more interesting, right? Both of these are zero knowledge proof systems, but the difference is that bulletproofs is using the elliptic curve discrete logarithm problem as its basis, right? Its hardness assumption, they call it. It's assumed that it's hard to find the discrete logarithm of a particular curve point, which is exactly the assumption you're making when you're using a public key to protect a private key. Yeah, so in that sense, the assumption here is no more than, is that a fair statement? Yeah, I believe so. The assumption here is no more than, well, no, that's not a fair statement in terms of the binding property of the commitment. But so, yeah, whereas with Starks and Snarks, right, I should say Snarks, which is actually being used in Zcash, the assumptions are, I forget the details, it's like Gap Diffie-Hellman or something, but it's basically you're building a significantly different construction with the elliptic curve stuff. You're using multiple elliptic curves in a certain special way, and it's generally considered to be a stronger assumption in the sense of we're less sure that it's true. But this is just, again, I'm just reporting what I've heard in various documents, presentations. I'm not knowledgeable about that.
Okay. I think, yeah, one more thing, confidential transactions and bulletproofs.
Yeah, so obviously, if you were to read this paper, you would struggle a bit, I think, on the point of how does this connect to confidential transactions exactly, because in this section 2, and I think I've noted here that I've actually plagiarized my own previous document quite a lot in that section. I've copied some sections. It's very important to understand the idea of a commitment, and this is true if you want to just understand confidential transactions generally or specifically here. So a commitment scheme is basically, here's a simple way to understand it. Like we all know that game where you flip a coin and you put your hand over it and somebody calls and they say heads or tails, right? So the idea of a commitment scheme is very much like that. You have a value that you cover, you keep secret. In that case, it's just one of two values, heads or tails. You keep that secret, and the other person makes a decision, like they say heads, and then you are not able to change the value of the coin while it's kept covered. Yeah. So the commitment scheme is like that. It has two properties, hiding and binding. And without going into the mathematical details, although it's in the document, the particular kind of commitment that's used in confidential transactions is called a Pedersen commitment, which specifically uses curve points, or you could call them public keys. It uses two of them. It kind of uses two of them, but the actual commitment itself is just one key. And what I'm going through in section 2 there is I'm explaining, like down here, the properties of that particular commitment scheme, because they're kind of crucial. And in particular, at the end of that section, I talk about something called a vector Pedersen commitment, because it turns out that what you can do, and this is absolutely crucial to this whole setup, is you can commit not just to one number, but to two numbers or three numbers or a whole vector of numbers, all at the same time with one point. That's what I'm showing in that equation. Sorry, that equation there. The C just is one elliptic curve point, and it commits to all the numbers, V1, V2, up to Vn. And confidential transactions, to be clear, doesn't use a vector. It just uses a single commitment, like the top of those two equations. But it uses it in a really clever way, and it makes it possible to construct a kind of proof that the amount A in that equation is actually in the range. So the range might be 0 to 42 bitcoins, right? And you make a proof that it's in the range 0 to 42 bitcoins in confidential transactions using something called a Borromean ring signature, which unfortunately requires you to kind of publish signatures on a whole very large set of different keys. And publishing a signature on a whole set of different keys requires a lot of space. And that's why people weren't particularly happy with the original design of confidential transactions, because it took up a lot of space. So in the new system, which this is just like the first step of the thinking, is commit to lots and lots of different numbers at once in one point. That allows you to do a bunch of clever linear algebra E-type tricks that allow you to create a proof which is much smaller, that the number is in range. So the specific application of bulletproofs to confidential transactions is to create a range proof in a size which, let's say for 32 bits, so whatever that is, 42 bitcoins, the size of that proof might be, I think, about 630 bytes. But although that's impressive, what's even more impressive is that it's logarithmic. So every time you double the size of the range, you only add a fixed number of extra bytes. Even better, you can batch the proofs together, which means that if you do multiple outputs in one transaction, you get even better scaling properties. So in a sense, kind of sort of hand wavy, it solves the scaling. It solves the scaling problem of confidential transactions related to proving this range. But as you and I have noticed and discussed on Twitter and various other places, there is a downside, which is that there's no way we can create this as a binding commitment. So when you commit to lots of different numbers, like in that equation, it means you're taking lots of different numbers and compressing them into one point. And you cannot make that a binding commitment, which means that if anybody's got a quantum computer, or if anyone's got another kind of ECDLP, a discrete log break, some clever algorithm nobody's thought of, they could print infinite money without anyone knowing. So that's why we're all kind of like, well, maybe, this is great, maybe, but we don't really think it's going to happen today. So, but yeah, so in terms of like the document, I mean, it goes through various kind of linear algebra constructions. Probably the most important one for those who do end up reading like the mathematical parts is the stuff by Jonathan Bootle in 2016. You'll find it referred to in Bulletproofs. Is a particularly clever thing where he's actually found a way to make a commitment by doing a kind of recursion. So it's something that could appeal to coders, I think, because what he does is he makes a commitment to a large vector be like equivalent to a half size vector, which is equivalent to a proof of a vector, which is half the size again, until you get down to just like two numbers at the end, sort of thing. I'm obfuscating a ton of detail, but anyway. Okay. And then in terms of like what Bulletproofs are useful for, it's worth mentioning, this is the thing that I didn't really cover properly in the document. It's right at the end, is actually you can use this for general arithmetic circuits, which basically means like you can make the proof be that a certain polynomial equals a certain value, and the polynomial can be like anything, right? So you can make really complicated mathematical statements and prove that they're true about some secret without revealing the secret or any other information. So you could prove, I mean, I'd like to look into this because it's kind of interesting. I think you could prove something like the pre-image of a SHA-2 hash contains a certain string. Because I'm thinking like if you could do that, you could do clever things maybe with Bitcoin transactions. Yeah, but you should probably ask other people about that. I haven't really got much knowledge about that area yet.
All right.
Did you have any more questions about the ideas involved? Or?
No, I don't think I didn't understand much.
Well, you understand.
I will rewatch it and we'll see.
But I think you understood like a lot of the like high level trade-offs because you wrote about that in your blog post, right?
Yes, so of course I understand the high level stuff. I mean, I understand as far as I'm making a mistake, but because not many people are writing about it on the high level, but
yeah,
rather I'm the one who's writing about it on a high level.
But, I mean, I think about this way, like this kind of stuff. It doesn't matter whether it's this specific construction, but this kind of stuff is, I think, really exciting. Like, remember that whole zero knowledge contingent payment thing from Greg Maxwell, right? Like the whole Sudoku puzzle and this kind of thing, right? Like where we can get situations where we can pay for things where we know we're guaranteed in advance that we're going to get the information that we want.
Yeah, I know even Tumblebee did the same thing.
Yes, exactly.
I don't know. I understood it at the time, but right now I can't even recall it.
But I mean, even without understanding the mechanics, the idea is kind of promising, right? You could build all kinds of interesting systems. Yeah, that's my feeling. Because it takes verification. It takes execution of contracts off chain, right, or programs or whatever it is. Stuff like all we need to do is just verify something. Maybe it takes a few hundred bytes. Maybe if we're lucky, it's just a single signature, like a 32-byte, 64-byte schnorsig or whatever. But this is the kind of direction I want to see things going personally. I want to see things moving off chain, like the semantics, like what the transaction really means is not there. Yes, scriptless scripts is another one. This whole thing, just get it off the chain. My dream is that the chain is just like a single 32-byte number every 10 minutes or something like that. You know, like all the transactions just get boiled down, everything. You know, because that gives you privacy and scalability, right?
Can't we use this on Lightning somehow?
Yeah, I mean, Lightning is kind of it's definitely using some of the. It's definitely the same philosophy, right? Where something is being moved off chain. It's part of it is like being able to delay finality of contract sort of thing, isn't it? Like, it's for me, I think SegWit was the key thing there, right? Because if we can start making contracts that depend on each other, then that's great.
Yeah, it just, if we don't care about transaction sizes, then we can do all sorts of things, but we care about transaction sizes.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, like look at Monero, they don't care about transaction sizes, so they can do all sorts of things. Oh, by the way, Monero, you said when last time we met that you were into researching ring signatures. Maybe at the Breaking Bitcoin, not even last time. You said you were into researching ring signatures, but it got really complicated when you started looking at the code of Monero.
I don't remember saying that
happened with
specifically, but I'm sure that's true. But certainly, I remember probably at least twice going back to the like Monero paper and reading like the ring signature construction. Maybe the third time I understood it. I probably, if I go back to it now, I'm going to find it easier because I'd be, you know, how this works. You go more and more into stuff and it gets easier and easier. But it's I think it's really cool, like the actual basic design of Monero, the basic idea of how they make like they make it can't spend it twice. That's really cool. But yeah, I totally agree with you. It's all about trade-offs, and I think people who aren't good, and I totally understand, most people are not going to delve into every technical detail, but you have this very strong tendency just to fall into some oversimplification, like, oh, Monero's fungible, we need perfect fungibility, otherwise there's no point. That argument sounds really attractive, but I think it's not correct, because you've got to consider the trade-offs. If you can get perfect fungibility with no trade-offs, then of course we all just move to that, right? But I don't think that's correct. And I also think that it's kind of suspicious if you're going to just start a new coin every time you find a better privacy solution, right? I mean, so because this is a protocol, right? I mean, when we wanted privacy for the internet, we didn't ditch TCP/IP, right? I mean, maybe that we should have done, right? But we introduced SSL, and SSL was complete crap, and we introduced TLS, which was slightly less crap. But and we have Tor, and I bet if you're a real expert privacy researcher, you could come up with a infinitely better like network protocol than TCP/IP. But we're not going to ditch it. That's not how it works, right? This is like a global network protocol, okay? So I think it's just, for me, it's not the right way to go about things. And also, a lot of Monero people are too kind of like, oh yeah, Monero, and it's so perfect, but it's just obviously not.
It's a new thing. It's a new thing. I see a change in the community of Monero community. As the price went up lately, new people went in, and people started to troll me like very hard sometimes.
Right. Yeah. The last year or two, especially, I guess. Yeah, that's true. It's normal when things get bigger. Then there are more people coming in, and
another thing. Okay, this is gonna be the last one. Mimblewimble.
Sure.
As I see it right now, in this moment, Mimblewimble is like. Do you remember Ethereum? Ethereum before it launched, Air Bitcoin, a whole Bitcoin community was advocating for Ethereum, and then they came out and did this smart contract stuff with a new coin, and now no one advocating for Ethereum, and Mimblewimble. I feel like the same thing. It's not gonna be a sidechain. We see what happened with drive chains, with fast sorts. So I don't know. I don't think sidechains are gonna come anytime soon. So Mimblewimble is going to be a new coin, won't it?
Well, no, that's not even a question, right? I mean, Grin exists as an implementation today, but it doesn't mean that there won't be other implementations. Now, you're asking me two like completely like different questions, right? Because well, no, you're not. You're asking me specifically about sidechains, about whether it's ever going to happen.
I'm asking Mimblewimble Green.
Right.
Okay, Green is the implementation. Mimblewimble was the great story about Harry Potter and Voldemort. But that's what people know. No one knows what is green. If you say everyone knows Mimblewimble.
Sure.
Yeah. Anyway, so my question is that as I see it, it's not going to be applied Bitcoin within the next 20 years. Bitcoin is not going to benefit from it at all. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the elephant in the room is sidechains, isn't it? I mean, maybe what's going to happen is somebody's going to finesse it somehow. I mean, Paul Stortz has tried to finesse it. He's tried to, like, let's look at the problem in a different way. Let's consider that we could do sidechains in this particular kind of way instead of the way that was being considered before. And you've got federated sidechains, and I don't know. I don't know if sidechains are going to happen or when they're going to happen, but it does seem quite true that. Well, first of all, I don't think that if sidechains happen, that there'll be some kind of massive like fireworks celebration. Everyone will love it, because what everyone loves, what you want to get the crowds involved, is you pay.
We need an application for that.
Well, no. That's no. Sorry, let me finish. That's not what I was going to say. The reason I don't think sidechains will be some massive celebration is because we've seen the history of this is that people love it when you give them a chance to make money, and sidechains specifically do not give that. That is the entire purpose of them. Is to not give people a chance to make money, unless you introduce like demurrage, which nobody's going to go for. So I don't think there'll ever be some kind of massive explosion moment when sidechains, in quotes, happens. But and so it might be quite quiet in the background for a long time, even if it ever really gets going. But I think if it does get going, what it will do is create that scenario of experimentation, especially with the more experimental privacy tech that we tend to be interested in.
Of course.
Yeah.
Everyone is interested in experimental Bitcoin tech, but we know how to do privacy from 2013, and no one did it.
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that, because if you look at CoinJoin and CoinSwap type stuff, however you implement it,
yes, CoinJoin is
limited.
Came very, very fast, but it's just not gonna have a big anonymity set.
No, it's not going to scale to the large enough set. Yeah, I agree. Unless something changes. But that's why when I look at like the whole privacy landscape, I agree with you about the side chains, right? I agree with you that it's very limited. We don't really have a route to that at the moment. And I agree with you that things like CoinJoin, it's limited, blah, blah, blah. But I think that's why I'm increasingly drawn to looking at the kind of stuff which takes the semantics off chain. So Lightning is one aspect, but as we were discussing recently, it's like a partial solution. It's a solution which has other problems, but it has value for sure, right? So that's an off-chain example. But if it's scriptless scripts, Schnorr changes the anonymity set. If it's masked, mask changes the anonymity set of contracts. Whether it's more advanced stuff, whether it uses various flavors of zero knowledge proofs in an off-chain way, which doesn't require forks and whatnot. I'm more positive about that kind of thing.
I see. Well, research can always surprise it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It always does.
Yeah.
It's just you don't know where it's going to happen. You can't expect it until it happens. All right.
Yeah. maybe there's almost too much research and not enough work, right? Implementation, which is, I know that's one of your opinions, and I tend to share it generally.
Yeah. Right now we are doing the client-side filtering with Lucas, who joined us, and yeah, we are basically refactoring the wallet, but finally it's going to be fast. Yeah.
So this is like a kind of a hybrid SPV thing, is it, or?
Not yet, because you know the client-side filtering, who came up with it with the Lightning Network developers, and
Mm.
and and the problem is, when we were looking into it, we were looking into LND, the daemon, what is using it. The problem was that for a Bitcoin wallet, for a as customizable Bitcoin wallet, what I have with Hidden Wallet is just not good enough. The LND, not even talking about the reliability, the bugs. I didn't even get that far. Uh, Anyway, I was looking at more into it, and I saw that, well, the only way to do this client-side filtering is to create our own server and run a BTCD. Yes, run a BTCD with Neutrino on it. So then
Yeah.
oh well, then we are going to write our own server, backend server, and do the filters, create the filters there, send it to all the clients, the same filter.
Oh, okay.
So and when Bitcoin Core nodes able to serve anyone with the filters, then we are going to change to the, well, this is an SPV mode, yes. Then we are going to change to that, but for now, well, if we have to use a server, we might as well use our own.
Right. Yeah. Samurai is a bit like that, isn't it? Or I haven't actually.
Samurai has a backend, and I mean, they are a mobile wallet, okay, so they couldn't solve too much things, and this thing was not around, so they were just using the plain old stuff.
Right. I understand. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, it's not. It's a very important practical problem, and it's not an easy one, is it? The right way to make the trade-offs in syncing. Yeah.
I think it is now. It is now. I read the bit. It's amazing. It just, you can, well, there are some very very far-fetched theoretical situations where you can lose your privacy, but nothing compared to what we had so far. So it just, it's going to be a good enough solution for the next 20 years or something like that.
Yeah, so it's much better, is basically what you're saying. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Good to hear.
All right.
I should read up. Okay.
Okay.
Nice to speak to you. I'm sure we'll meet somewhere soon.
Yeah. Nice to speak to you. Okay. Thanks. Thanks, everything.
Thanks. Bye.